Rap legend Eazy-E passed away just 10 days after publicly revealing that he had AIDS. His sudden death shocked fans around the world. But what if Eazy-E didn't just die from the disease? What if he was silenced on purpose? In 1995, the world was stunned when Eazy-E, whose real name was Eric Wright, suddenly collapsed and was hospitalized. He had gone to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center with a cough, thinking it was just bronchitis. But doctors quickly diagnosed him with full-blown AIDS. Within days, he was isolated in the intensive care unit. He was only 31 years old. Just 3 weeks before his death, no one even knew he was sick. There were no signs, no warnings, and no interviews about his health. Then, on March 16, 1995, his attorney Ron Sweeney read a statement supposedly written by Eazy-E. In it, Eazy-E talked about the seriousness of AIDS and said it didn't discriminate. He also said he wanted his fans to be aware and stay informed. The message hit hard. It sounded like a farewell, even though no one saw it coming. But the more people looked into the situation, the more things didn't add up. Eazy-E had lived a bold, high-energy life. His illness seemed to come out of nowhere, and the timeline didn't match what doctors usually see in AIDS cases. HIV usually develops over years, but Eazy-E went from a simple cough to dying in less than a month. Friends and people close to him were confused. They hadn't seen any signs that he was sick. The speed of his decline didn't seem normal. After his death, many people began to question what really happened. Rumors started spreading in Los Angeles and in the music world. Was this really just a tragic illness? Or had something darker taken place? Some of the events before his death also raised eyebrows. He got married on his deathbed, just days before passing. His hospital room was sealed off. There were even claims that the FBI had files related to him. Meanwhile, his enemies in the industry seemed to grow stronger after he was gone. As time passed, more and more people started asking questions. Now, decades later, fans and investigators are putting the pieces together. The mystery behind Eazy-E's death is finally being re-examined, and what they're finding is even more shocking than anyone expected. The truth may have been hidden for years, but people are still searching for answers. Eazy-E checked into the hospital in February 1995. Within just 1 month, he was gone. The diagnosis, HIV, quickly followed by full-blown AIDS, progressed at a pace that shocked not only his fans, but also medical professionals. By early March, his family was told his condition was terminal. Then, on March 26th, the hip-hop world lost one of its most influential figures. From hospital check-in to funeral, only 31 days had passed. The speed of Eazy-E's decline didn't seem normal. Even in the early 1990s, when treatment for AIDS wasn't as advanced as it is today, people usually lived for years after being diagnosed. Tennis legend Arthur Ashe lived for more than a year after revealing he had AIDS. Actor Rock Hudson had months between his diagnosis and death. But with Eazy-E, there was no slow decline. There were no typical symptoms like weight loss, skin problems, or confusion that usually come with the later stages of AIDS. Although Eazy-E had lost some of his appetite, he was still strong enough to joke around with friends, make business decisions, and even sign new artists. He was still active in his music label, Ruthless Records. This sudden turn in his health didn't feel like a natural progression of the disease. It felt like he was disappearing not just from illness, but also under strange and secretive circumstances. In the music industry, known for power struggles, backroom deals, and hidden agendas, Eazy's death raised quiet doubts. While no one questioned the official story publicly, many privately felt things didn't add up. His fans and friends tried to make sense of it all, but the timeline only brought more confusion. Was this really about AIDS? Or had someone wanted Eazy silenced? Lazy Bone, a close friend and member of Bone Thugs-n-Harmony, remembered seeing Eazy just before he got sick. He said Eazy still looked like himself, strong, confident, full of energy. Lazy Bone described him as built like a tank. He didn't show the usual signs of someone battling a deadly illness. Bone Thugs-n-Harmony had just signed to Eazy's label and were around him often, so they saw how he looked and acted almost every day. They didn't notice any sickness, no confusion, no drastic weight loss, no skin problems, none of the typical signs of AIDS. Eazy's former assistant and close friend, Henry, made an even stronger statement. He said clearly, "There were no lesions, no dementia. I lost an uncle to AIDS. I know what it looks like. This wasn't that." Henry's words carried weight because he had seen firsthand what AIDS does to someone. What he saw in Eazy didn't match what the public was told. Everyone who had spent time with Eazy in those last weeks shared the same view. There were no warning signs. He wasn't acting tired, he was still going to the studio, laughing, planning new projects, and even traveling. He seemed like himself, full of life. Then suddenly, he was gone. For those who loved him, it didn't feel like he had just died from a disease. It felt like something, or someone, had made sure he would be silenced forever. But even while Eazy lay in the hospital, the story didn't stop. In fact, a new and complicated chapter began behind the scenes. It was no longer just about his health. It was about who would control his name, his business, and his legacy. On March 14th, Eazy-E married Tomika Woods in a small private ceremony at 9:30 p.m. in the hospital. The timing and location were unusual. Just days later, Eazy was gone. This wedding would spark a new battle over ownership of Ruthless Records, his successful music label, and everything he had built. What followed was not just grief, but also legal battles, questions of power, and a fight over his empire. Inside the quiet hospital room, something unexpected happened. Just 12 days before Eazy-E's death, he married Tomika Woods. This wasn't a romantic gesture or a last-minute decision made from love. It appeared to be a well-planned legal move. Tomika, who was pregnant with their second child at the time, wasn't just becoming his wife. She was stepping into a position of power, as the person who would take control of his entire estate. By marrying Eazy-E, she gained legal rights to everything he owned, including his music label, Ruthless Records. After his death, a fierce legal battle began. Mike Klein, the business affairs director at Ruthless Records, filed a lawsuit claiming he owned 50% of the company. Tomika, now Eazy's widow, claimed full ownership. The situation turned into a major conflict. The court got involved and froze the company's assets, which were worth over $10 million. A conservator was put in charge of managing the business during the legal fight. Meanwhile, Eazy's last double album was shelved and never released, caught in the middle of the chaos. Eazy-E, who had helped build the West Coast hip-hop scene from a small garage in Compton, had passed away, but instead of peace, he left behind confusion, betrayal, and a war over money and control. There wasn't even time to grieve properly. The public focused on the legal drama, while the deeper, more disturbing questions were ignored. Why did the fight for power explode so quickly? Why was Tomika suddenly at the center of it all? And why did Eazy's music, his voice, and everything he stood for go completely silent at the moment he needed it most? The mystery surrounding his illness, the strange timing of his marriage, and the war over his empire would cast a long shadow over his legacy. And then, years later, something chilling added even more doubt. In 2003, during an appearance on Jimmy Kimmel Live, Suge Knight, known for his violent past and for being the co-founder of Death Row Records, said something deeply unsettling. Talking casually, he said that you could kill someone slowly by injecting them with blood from someone who has AIDS. Then, without hesitation, he mentioned Eazy-E. "That's the Eazy-E thing," he said, and laughed. It was a strange moment. The audience laughed nervously. Jimmy Kimmel had joked earlier by wearing a bulletproof vest, trying to lighten the mood, but Suge's comment turned the atmosphere cold. He wasn't confessing, and it wasn't really a joke. It felt like a clue. Eazy-E's son, young Eazy, later posted the clip online with a disturbing message. His father didn't get sick until after a strange incident involving Suge Knight. He believed there was something more to the story, something dark and hidden. Years later, in a documentary called For the Record, the story of Latinos in hip-hop, rapper Frost added more fuel to the mystery. Breaking his silence, he said that Eazy-E had been given tainted needles during acupuncture treatments. Frost claimed he was there and saw it happen. He didn't name anyone directly but said, "I don't want to say his name, but in hip-hop history, they call him the devil." The message was clear. He believed someone had done it on purpose. These statements from Suge Knight and Frost, along with the strange timeline of Eazy-E's illness, the sudden marriage, and the legal battle that followed, raised serious questions. Was Eazy-E's death really just the result of AIDS? Or had something much more sinister happened behind closed doors? The mystery still haunts fans and friends. To this day, many believe the truth behind Eazy-E's death hasn't fully come out, and maybe never will. Eazy-E's illness may not have been something he caught by accident. According to rapper Frost, what happened to Eazy-E wasn't just a virus. It was something done to him on purpose. Frost shared a deeply disturbing story that changed the way people looked at Eazy's final days. Just before his health began to fail, Eazy-E had visited a music studio where he was offered an unusual solution for his chronic back pain: an acupuncture session. But this wasn't a normal treatment. It was set up in secret. There were no medical records, no paperwork, and no outside witnesses. Only the people involved knew what really happened. Soon after that session, Eazy-E developed a harsh cough. At first, it didn't seem serious. But the cough quickly worsened. In just a few short weeks, his health collapsed. What seemed like a minor issue turned into a fatal illness, leading to his death not long after being diagnosed with AIDS. This raised an alarming question. Was it really a disease that took his life, or had someone purposely infected him through what was made to look like medical care? Frost didn't name the person responsible directly, but he hinted clearly. In hip-hop circles, this person was referred to as the devil, a symbol of betrayal, power, and hidden violence. For years, people whispered about this shadowy figure. With Frost's testimony, those whispers took shape. Could it be possible that Eazy-E was targeted? That the needle used in acupuncture wasn't meant to help him, but to kill him? These are questions that don't have easy answers, but they continue to haunt fans and those who knew him. The story of his illness started to sound less like a tragedy and more like an attack. Years after his death, the mystery grew even darker. In 2011, the FBI quietly unsealed a document that added a shocking new layer to Eazy-E's story. The file revealed a hidden extortion operation connected to the Jewish Defense League, JDL, a group known for violence and intimidation. This group had reportedly been threatening famous hip-hop artists, using fear to force them into paying for protection. And Eazy-E was named directly in the document. It stated that he had been one of the victims of this extortion ring before he died of AIDS. This was a serious accusation. It suggested that people in the industry were being blackmailed behind the scenes. If Eazy-E refused to pay up, was that why he was targeted? Was he punished for standing his ground? The document also mentioned another huge name, Tupac Shakur, who was murdered the year after Eazy-E died. The fact that both of these rap legends may have been targeted by the same network was terrifying. If true, it meant that Eazy-E's death wasn't just medical. It could have been part of a much bigger, more dangerous plan. Adding even more confusion was something that continues to puzzle doctors and fans today. Eazy-E was known for having many romantic partners and fathering 7 children with 6 different women. But strangely, none of his partners or children ever tested positive for HIV or AIDS. This is extremely rare. In most situations, someone who has the virus would have passed it on to at least one partner or child. The fact that no one else was infected made his diagnosis seem even more suspicious. Altogether, the stories from Frost, the unsealed FBI documents, and the strange medical facts surrounding his case all point toward a disturbing possibility. What if Eazy-E didn't die from a random illness? What if he was silenced, intentionally and cruelly? These are the questions that remain unanswered, and they continue to cast a long, dark shadow over the legacy of a man who helped change the world of hip-hop forever. When people compare Eazy-E's case to Magic Johnson's, the mystery only deepens. Magic Johnson, who was diagnosed with HIV, continued to live a healthy life, and his wife, Cookie Johnson, never contracted the virus. Doctors explained this by pointing to a mix of factors like when she was exposed, how much of the virus was in his system, and even possible genetic resistance. But with Eazy-E, there has never been any clear explanation for why none of his partners or children tested positive for HIV. He had 7 children with 6 different women, yet not one of them was infected. That kind of outcome is extremely rare, especially for a disease like AIDS, which has clear patterns of transmission. The silence from doctors and scientists on this issue has been unsettling. There are no official medical records or research that explain how this could have happened. It's like a huge piece of the story is just missing. Even those closest to him found it hard to believe. Rapper BG Knockout, who worked closely with Eazy-E and witnessed another person die of AIDS, said that Eazy showed no signs of being sick. He had seen what the disease looked like and how it progressed, but with Eazy, nothing added up. There was no slow decline, no visible symptoms. His sudden deterioration just didn't match the normal course of AIDS. This medical oddity made everything feel even more suspicious. How could someone with so many partners die from AIDS, but not one of them test positive? It raised more questions than answers, and it pushed people to look closer at what happened in Eazy-E's final weeks. The more people looked, the more things seemed off. The timeline, the secrecy, and now the medical details. None of it made sense. It created the perfect environment for a darker theory to take root. One of the most chilling parts of this story involves a mystery visit to Eazy-E's studio. According to insiders, someone posing as a medical professional came to see him just weeks before he got sick. There's no official record of the visit, no details about who this person was, and no clear reason for why they were there. But after this visit, something strange happened. Eazy-E was given an injection. Then everything changed. He became sick almost immediately and was in the hospital not long after. His health declined so fast, it didn't seem natural. That's when people started to wonder if he had been injected with something that wasn't HIV, but something made to act like it. During the late 80s and early 90s, there were secret medical experiments allegedly run by the US military. These projects were said to be researching synthetic viruses, man-made agents that could mimic diseases like AIDS but couldn't be detected with regular blood tests. These biological weapons were designed to cause severe immune system failure within weeks. One such agent, called C-named DRE-92, appears in recently declassified files. It was never supposed to leave military labs, but what if it did? If something like DRE-92 was used on Eazy-E, that would explain everything. His rapid decline, the absence of infection in his partners, and the failure of doctors to find typical AIDS symptoms in those around him. This wouldn't just be a disease. It would be an assassination, planned and executed with terrifying precision. BG Knockout once said quietly, "It was murder. I know it." That one sentence has stuck with many fans who still feel that something terrible happened behind closed doors. And then there's one final piece to this disturbing puzzle, a name that kept surfacing in whispered conversations, Suge Knight. Known as one of the most feared figures in the music industry, Suge and Eazy-E had a long and bitter rivalry. Eazy-E once reportedly said he wanted to kill Suge, and Jerry Heller, Eazy's former manager, would later call Suge evil. Suge Knight's name has been linked to violence, control, and power plays within the industry. When you put together all the strange events, mystery needles, hidden files, medical oddities, and threats, it's hard not to wonder whether someone as powerful and feared as Suge Knight could have played a role in what happened to Eazy-E. To this day, Eazy-E's death is surrounded by more questions than answers. What looked at first like a tragic illness now seems like it could have been something much darker. The man whose fast rise in the music industry seemed closely connected to the sudden fall of Eazy-E's influence was Suge Knight. His presence felt like a dark cloud over everything that happened after Eazy-E's death. Once Eazy passed away, Suge Knight turned Death Row Records into one of the most powerful music labels in the industry. Dr. Dre stayed with Death Row, Snoop Dogg became a huge star, and money poured in. At the same time, Ruthless Records, Eazy-E's label and a symbol of West Coast hip-hop, began to fall apart. The company lost its energy, its leadership, and its influence, dying slowly just like its founder. The timing of everything was hard to ignore. Power shifted very quickly, almost as if it had been planned. Still, no one officially said anything. There was no police investigation, no arrests, and no court case. Suge Knight was never charged, and he never admitted anything. Instead, he acted like it was a joke. In interviews, he smiled, made dark jokes, and seemed to enjoy the fear people had of him. One time on late-night television, he even joked about using blood from someone with AIDS as a weapon, hinting at what happened to Eazy-E. It was not just strange. It was disturbing. It felt like he was sending a message without saying things directly. There were other strange details too. There was the fight at the studio, where tensions between Suge and Eazy got very serious. Then came the suspicious acupuncture treatment. Some insiders say it wasn't really for back pain, but a cover for something much worse. FBI files were unsealed years later, revealing that there had been investigations happening in the background, but those cases never went anywhere. Eazy-E's will was sealed quickly, possibly to protect certain truths from getting out. Then, a new woman quietly became his wife just before his death, while his children were left without clear answers. All of this left people wondering, did Eazy-E really die from a sudden illness, or was he silenced on purpose? Some believe it wasn't just nature or bad luck. They think it was a planned act, covered up by people who knew exactly what they were doing. Jerry Heller, Eazy-E's longtime business partner, once said, "We suspected him all along," clearly referring to Suge Knight. People close to Eazy-E believe they've known the truth for years. They don't need a court to confirm it. They saw the timeline, the way people stayed quiet, the strange medical story, and the comments Suge made afterward. All of it pointed in one direction. In their hearts, they believe Eazy-E wasn't just taken by a disease. He was taken by someone's plan. That's what makes this story even worse. If they're right, Eazy-E's death wasn't just a sad tragedy. It was a murder done right in front of the world, hidden by silence, power, and fear. The people who loved him have never stopped saying who they believe was behind it all. Now that you've heard the full story, what do you think really happened to Eazy-E? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.